Fate, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. You're very punctual, thank you. I've been shooting in Chicago. I'm doing the Aaron Sorkin film, the trial of the Chicago 7. So we've been doing riots and Chicago cops beating up hippies in the park at night. Yeah.
So it's not just a challenging film, it's a mentally challenging one, too.
Yes, but now we start the interior courtroom for the next 2 weeks, so it'll be settled down a bit.
Well, I can't thank you enough for shooting Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh, thank you.
Phedon,
it was a pleasure for me because I'm a car guy. You know, my family is actually, they were rally drivers in Europe. So my uncle, my dad, but he never was that successful. But his brother won Rally Acropolis in 50 and 51 in a Jaguar XK120, and then he raced Monte Carlo several times. So, you know, and I have a few sports cars. So for me, it was a dream. I mean, first of all, fifth movie with Mangold, so we really had our language down.
Mm-hmm.
And Christian Bale, a second film with him, was just, obviously, just pure joy to watch his performance. I mean, especially coming off of Vice and seeing him play a Brit again. And it was very close to, Ken Miles is close to his own personality. You know, he really had fun being a sort of goofy, offbeat, quirky Brit. And then, you know, my third movie with Matt, also one of the nicest people you can hope to work with. So it was very enjoyable. And the whole cast was just fantastic. Tracy led, obviously, and yeah, it's just great.
Yeah, no, it's from casting all the way down, it is an exemplary film. And I'm so happy to hear that you love racing and race cars. I'm a 50s, 60s muscle car and 70s muscle car gal.
Oh, you are.
So I had a 73 Plymouth Satellite with a 484 in it for the longest time.
Wow.
And then I helped when I lived back east I used to hang out with guys who were restoring cars all the time. So I knew how to, I mean, I changed out in my car water pumps, temperature gauges, starters, alternators.
Oh, look at you. That's great.
And for years, when I first came out to L.A. and was working in production, I was primarily working with the second unit stunt guys.
There's a long tradition of that in Hollywood. I mean, I started with Roger Corman, so before that was Ron Howard. He did Eat My Dust. And, yeah, I remember he had the record for the most setups, and one day he did like 110 setups. I told Mangold that, and he goes, yeah, but you know, what kind of setups were those? Yeah. But, we had a great stunt crew, too. Robert Nagel was our coordinator, and then Alan, unfortunately, I'm blanking on his last name, but he's our precision driver. And, you know, in early testing, we realized that we have to be really close to these cars. I mean, you see it in the movie. We're just like inches away tracking them. So we did a lot of, you know, fancy rigs initially, and then realized, you know, all the old school stuff is actually the best. Just sort of hard mounts on Christian Bale, no vibration isolators, just feeling, you know, I mean, that whole Willow Springs race. I mean, all the stunts that you see, none of it is CG. It's all really unfolding for real in the background. So you got close-ups, and you see this Corvette spin out and go in the dirt, and all that's like actually coordinated stunt work, and it was really challenging, but great fun, you know. But it was, yeah. We tried to do as little green screen as possible. The only thing we did like 2 days, not even on stage, like in the aircraft hangar. Just a few very specific close-ups of Christian, you know, when he's on his last lap, and he decides to wait up, and you know, he considers should I conform to this wish and like we'll wait up for the others, and then he downshifts and they cross the line together. But other than that, I mean, we really like the Daytona race, the Willow Springs race, it was all us, also first unit working with second unit, and then second unit went 10 days. Because, Le Mans is a countryside race, so we needed, this shot in California, but we did send second unit for 10 days to do the countryside roads, to match Le Mans. We actually went to Le Mans, but that track was not really usable because it's highly secured now. And, back then it was just, no barriers. And,
yeah, you could just run wild on it.
Yeah, Malzahn Strait was just basically, I think 3 kilometer, 4 kilometer stretch of just a tree-lined country road. So, and then you get to that final hairpin turn, the right turn there, which is really featured in the film. Like who's going to break later, So, well, yeah, it was great.
And this is something that I love because of the close-ups. You're shooting low so that we really get immersed. When you're sitting in your seat watching, you feel, because of the way you are loaded to the ground with the camera, because people forget how low these cars actually sit.
Yeah, that's why it's called GT40, because it's 40 inches
off the ground.
Yeah.
And so
the roof line. Yeah.
So the camera's got to get down there.
Yeah,
but
the camera was almost scraping the ground, and then, it's also framing in the asphalt and, getting all that sensation of speed. And our biggest concern was, of course, to get the cars up to speed. And Robert Nagel kept saying, guys, these are not race cars. These are picture cars, because, of course, we build over 30 race cars. The real ones are 12 to 15 million.
Yeah.
The Ferraris are 25 to 45 million. So we built 30 cars. It still cost about $100,000 each, and then the Cobras are those are from Superformance. They make those cars. But he said they're not race cars; these are picture cars. So I can't go 200 miles an hour. It takes a lot more to fine tune these chassis. It takes different tires, but we got them going pretty fast. I think you get a good sense of the speed in it, because in Rush, they actually used original cars, and they came with the owners, and, the owners didn't want to push them so hard, and, so I know they were struggling with it, and now, looking at it in retrospect, you can see that, they're not going that fast, but, and of course, we're not Steve McQueen, who on Le Mans insisted on shooting everything at actual race speed, but he also caused a fatality. And so it was, we kind of found the middle ground. But I think it works. Definitely. And, with Mangold always, we're not really action filmmakers, Mangold's always, a character director and creating these, really solid characters. And for that, to keep the audience involved in all this racing, it's much more interesting, of course, to, like you said, tell it through the perspective of the driver, try to get a sense of what it's like being in the cockpit. The sort of insanity of it all, like this little machine with this gigantic engine, but seeing all the action really from the driver's perspective as much as possible. So a lot of POVs out the windshield. In the night race, I decided to give the Ferraris yellow lights. I didn't even research it, but I think it actually turned out to be correct. But so you can identify them right away at night.
Especially during the rain.
Yeah, during the rain. That really helped also, the rain, and convey some of the speed. And of course, you can't set rain towers for like a 3-mile stretch, so we just went down the road, and we sent like this vehicle ahead that was just spraying, and then we would cue the cars, and most of the rain is really just what gets picked up from the other cars, all the spritz and stuff, so that worked out really well, actually.
Well, something that I love, putting us in the driver's seat, because you truly feel. And when they're cornering those cars, it's like the way the camera is, and you're tilting on the track with the car.
Yeah.
And you get the sensation of that car cornering on rails. And it's truly outstanding, and it's something we have never seen before. And it's also something even racing fans, in that day and age, as we also see through archival footage, ABC Wide World of Sports, but all you're getting are long lens, wide angle pans.
Yeah, of course. I mean, back then they were just panning, and even now, I mean, I watch Formula One. I mean, you'd never really realize that they're going. It has a digital display on the screen, and it says they're doing 330 kilometers, but
it doesn't feel it.
Yeah, you don't feel it. Yeah, I mean, now they put these onboard GoPro cameras too and stuff, and you feel it a bit in the POVs, but yeah, in order to get the sense of it, you got to really be on the track and be close. And we're in the pursuit vehicle, and they're going around these corners at 90 miles an hour. I mean, and trying to pull focus and pull iris, and the whole camera crew in there. Obviously trusting our excellent driver, but it's quite a thrill ride. I mean, and it helps with performances because you feel it on the faces, you feel the vibration, you feel all the interactive light. You can't really fake that with some kind of rig on stage and shaking the car.
Yeah, you get some.
I mean, that great scene with Tracy Letts when Matt takes him.
Oh God!
Let me show you what $9 million buys you at. I mean, Tracy had no idea. I mean, he's a great actor, but I mean, a lot of that is just we used the first take. I mean, a lot of that is just.
How did you even fit him in the car?
I know, right?
We
made a joke out of it. He goes, I just sat on my nuts, but it was a squeeze, and then we sat him in, and we had hard-mounted cameras, so that frontal two-shot and 2 rakings, and we just let him go, and we were watching it on the monitor and looking at his reaction, and we couldn't believe it. I mean, we're like, oh my God. And, and they could stop anywhere they wanted, and then they ran the scene, so when he starts crying, I mean, we were like, we had no idea what's going to happen.
Oh my God. It was
very much like with Joaquin on stage, Walk the Line. We were just like, get the camera in there and let him, like, we had no idea what he's going to do, it was always just have the camera ready to follow and react, and it's very much a similar approach, because on Walk the Line, we also wanted to convey what it's like being Johnny Cash on stage, and have very few shots from the audience perspective, so it's really more getting the audience into the action that way. Yeah.
But something that you do, going beyond the racing, because the racing is secondary to the relationship and the friendship between Ken Miles and Carroll Shelby. And
correct. I mean, we think of it more as a friendship movie, a buddy movie, like in the classic sense, like Butch Cassidy and Kid, and I drew some inspiration from The Right Stuff, because again, it's these individuals, these crazy test pilots that would go out to Edwards Air Force Base and fly these insane machines and put their life on the line every time they went out there, and then they get inducted into NASA, and they're dealing with all the rules and the corporate structure, and so it's but the friendship and the characters, and the passion for pursuing what you love, and the ultimate sacrifice, and that's what the film is about. Of course, it needs to have great racing footage, but the heart is their relationship, and they really had a great chemistry, and I think Matt really held his own in a way. Christian, is Christian and has the more colorful character, but Matt did really great playing at Texas. I mean, the Boston.
Well, I have to say, what I particularly love is, number one, you keep the two of them as much as possible, on equal footing in the same shot. Metaphorically, it's spectacular from a dramatic standpoint. And then when you have, and Tracy towers over Matt. We all know this. And yet you have some really intense scenes happening. And that power shift isn't there. You've got, through angling, they're essentially eye to eye. And I thought that was so brilliant because it shows that Shelby never lets Ford get the better of him.
Right.
And I just love the way you angled that and shot that. And you have numerous moments in the film like that where you really use the angle of the camera.
Yeah, we like using wider angles and getting in close and always blocking and composing, where you feel, not really isolating the character, but feeling his immediate surrounding. And then in the offices of Ford, how, you have all the players and it's these very composed shots with foreground and background characters standing. So, and then, saving the real close-ups, for very, if you always cover everybody with close-ups, then you just become used to it. And
it's boring.
It loses its effectiveness. So, really save them for the key moments, But, yeah, I mean, it's great to see the audience reaction in those scenes, because, of course, people are into the car stuff, but we get, people screaming out at the screen and laughing and applauding, like in some of these office scenes in Ford's office. I mean, it's great, like how they're like hanging on to every beat there. So, yeah.
I know at the For Your Consideration screening that I was just at last week, the place erupted into cheers in the scene between Matt Damon and Josh Lucas. Out at just before the Tracy Letts in the car scene, and people were
when he locks in the office,
people were cheering and as Lucas is freaking out within the office.
I know,
and it was a perfect levity within the context of the film. And you really lend so beautifully through the windows. You really see, and again, it's that metaphor that comes across through the character study and the character building within the film that Mangold and you are so adept at.
Yeah.
Really beautifully done. But now, I love that you went with anamorphic lenses on this.
Well, I wanted to shoot, one of the movies we watched was, Grand Prix, of course, and just that whole CinemaScope, Kodak, saturated, old school Hollywood look, and also the way, they had technical limitations back then, when that was shot, so just the simplicity of it, like these close-ups in the car, the POVs, that was something I try to recreate. Not just doing drone shots and fancy wraparounds, just basic classic coverage. And that was really the anamorphic look. I wanted large format because I'd shot some stuff on the Lexus 65. I did some additional photography on Greatest Showman, and then recently on Call of the Wild, and that was Alexa 65. But the LF, the large format Alexa, which is slightly smaller sensor, had just come out, and I love the way the larger format, medium format, large format lenses create also this fall off and this beautiful lack of depth of field, but also just the way it falls off. It's very unique. But I tested spherical lenses, and then I looked at anamorphics in the cars and everything, that set, that the pits we build and Aquadolce airstrip, all that just looked spectacular and anamorphic, and it really felt right. And also, the flaring is different, and I really wanted that. But at the time, there was no anamorphic lens that covered the large sensor. So as I'm there testing at Panavision, there's Dan Sasaki, who's sort of a lens guru over there, and he goes, well, I can expand them. And I'm like, yes, but can you really expand them? And we start shooting in like a week. And he always says things, and, no one's really done it before. So we really went into day one with prototype lenses. So
Wow.
he adds another glass element and expands the lens to cover the LF, and we had some vignetting issues. It actually has a beautiful natural vignette, which often I build into the DI, but I didn't really have to do it on this. And it gave me the combination of the large format fall off and having the bigger sensor, but also maintaining the bending and the vignetting of anamorphics and the flare characteristics. So it's really a beautiful combo, and I'm doing it right now again. I mean, now it's become, since we did it, it's become really popular. Of the 50 sets they have of the T-series anamorphics, like 25 of them have been expanded. And if you talk to Panavision, maybe it was all about expanding right now. So we really kind of set a trend with that. And I mean, now I'm using it on Chicago 7, and I had a hard time even getting them because everyone is doing that now, you know. So, but yeah, they found some for me since I started it. So,
yes, and well, they should.
Yeah. No, but it's really beautiful because it also takes a bit of the sharpness and the edge off, and then, you know, of course, in the DI, adds film grain and really, you know, the saturation and the contrast would really match the Kodak film stock look, and it's really, when you've seen it on a big screen, but it really feels very cinematic and not like a digital camera, because often I'm in the DI and then they put up a leader or something. I see some other footage of some other project and I go, oh wow, like that looks so clean and textureless, and you know, so it's something with Skip Kimball and my colors that we've also perfected, because on Monuments Men I actually shot film and digital and mixed it, so, and then we really found a way to you know, blend the two by creating a film look for the digital footage. And on Nebraska, which he did as well, I mean, I had to shoot Alexa. I had tested black and white film stock, and I said, well, match it to that. And we also projected Paper Moon back then, and to see really like how alive and how the grain and the film projection really, like, we've forgotten, you know, like my kids who are 11, they've never even seen a film projection. So, you know, so I didn't want to overdo it, but I think we've really created a nice effect. And I remember Haskell Wexler, who has 2 Academy Awards for black and white, called me back then and said, oh, Phedon, you know, I just saw that Nebraska thing. Like, what film stock did you use on that? You know, so that was the ultimate compliment, of course.
Coming from Haskell, I would say you can't do any better than that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and it's actually funny, coincidentally, just was watching Medium Cool, you know, as a references and for background, and I mean, he just shot, you know, we just shot exactly, recreated exactly that, all the, you know, Grand Park and all the hippies there and yippies and trying to go to the convention, and, you know, so a lot of that footage was matched to Haskell's work. Yeah.
You know, what is the most gratifying aspect for you of cinematography? You are such a storyteller with your imagery, Phedon. I think this film truly is one of the best I have seen from you or anyone else. But I'm curious, what is the most gratifying thing about being a cinematographer for you?
Well, the reason I got into it initially has held up over the 45 films I've done, that, you know, you are presented with a different story and different actors and different environments and different locations, and so it's never routine. I try not to fall back to certain, you know, schemes that I reapply. I mean, I approach every film completely different. Like on this one that I'm doing now, it's a lot of handheld work, which I typically don't do. I'm more like a classic composition guy because I come from still photography and painting, so to me it's all about the frame and the composition. But, you know, just that you can apply a different visual look to each story is what keeps this job, fascinating, and of course different directors and different actors, but and I really pride myself in, if you see my films, I mean, you can't go, oh, yeah, that's Phedon shot that. Like with some DPs I know are excellent, but they do have a very strong handwriting on it.
Mm-hmm.
And with me, I mean, like Mouse Hunt looks completely different than $1 Million Hotel, than Sideways, than Weatherman, than, they all feel very different. And I always also pride myself that ultimately I'm telling the story for the director, so I don't really force something onto them that's not their own. And with Mangold, luckily, we have very similar sensibilities and taste. Mm-hmm. And, I compose something and I talk to my crew on the little HME headsets that I wear. I go pan left, tilt down, boom down a couple inches. And he doesn't even hear me say that because he's not on that system. And he will say, in sync, boom down, pan a little left. And I mean, it's like scary almost how we, so it's of course helpful when you work with somebody who has similar visual abilities. But like right now I'm working with Aaron Sorkin. He's more a writer and a play director. So I'm very much in control of the blocking and all the shot design and all the lensing. But I am also doing it with keeping in mind what he wants, even if he can't articulate it in a technical way. So that's always a nice challenge, to give them what they imagine and get it as close to that as possible, whether they can, tell me how to do it or not. So,
well, you get no complaints from me about what you bring to the screen, especially in this movie. Mm-hmm. I even love all of your Nespresso commercials with Clooney. I mean, they're gorgeous.
We have fun with George, that's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. How can you not?
Yeah.
Well,
with George, I've done 3 movies, and as an actor, as a director. I mean, I did Descendants, and then on Descendants, he offered me Ides of March, and so we went to Detroit and did that, and then Monuments Men. So yeah, it's another great relationship, and he's an old school filmmaker too. He likes to, it's part of it is also, these directors are more or less the same generation. We grew up with similar influences, like the same kind of movies. So, I mean, Mangold's a few years younger than I am. George and Aaron are 1 year older than I am. But George won't admit that.
No, he never admits to age, no.
Well, that's why he's phasing out the acting, yeah. So, so, I mean, we grew up watching the same films. I mean, with Mangold, although he's functioning well with the Hollywood system and is very successful at it, but he's really an indie filmmaker at heart. I mean, he started with Heavy and Copland and all those films, and I come from, and I didn't work myself up through the studio system like as an assistant and an operator or a gaffer. So, I mean, I just never went to film school. I was still photographer. My film school was really Roger Corman, where I did 8 movies in the late 80s, and, all 15-day shoots, so we had to be fast. We had to learn how to work with limited equipment, embrace natural light. So my lighting approach is still very much always based on, there's a logic to it that's based on the natural light situation. And, my influences were like Raoul Couture, who did a lot of Truffaut films, and Sven Nykvist and Robbie Miller, and the Japanese cinema and Italian neorealism, and Mangold's very similar. I mean, he loves Ozu, and Alexander Payne loves Kurosawa and De Sica. So we have a common built-in language just due to the fact that we have similar things that have formed us.
Mm-hmm. Well, Phedon, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your family day today to talk to me about Ford versus Ferrari.
Well, great. Thank you. I'm happy always to hear somebody who loves the film, and that's why we make movies. I mean, the greatest joy of making a movie is that, I mean, you know, I go to India and I'm in some remote small town near the Himalayas, and somebody says, "What do you do?" I'm a cameraman. And they go, "Oh, really? Like something I might have seen?" I go, "I don't know, you know, I did this movie Sideways." "Oh, Sideways, so great with the wine." I had nobody order fucking Merlot or I'm leaving, you know, like if you have something, and it's just, that's why we make them, you know, because it's just, you know, bridges all these cultures and through these humane stories, and that's why I'm really looking to do these kind of films, which are rare these days in Hollywood, and that's why this film is, I mean, it's a big budget Hollywood movie, I mean, there's no doubt about it, but, you know, to make $100 million movie with no superheroes is really not made for teenagers, although I certainly would have enjoyed it as a teenager.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, so, you know, it's I feel privileged and lucky and that I can still do those, but there are some directors that are still allowed to do them. I mean, it's getting harder and harder, and, you know, this technically is almost like Fox's last movie. We'll see if Disney will allow them to do a few more like this. Things are changing rapidly, and trying to finish out my career with holding on to these kind of films as long as possible. If this film finds an audience, because it can show the studios that, well, you can still make some of these. You know, I feel like this movie could be very popular because all these, also, you know, the red states and all these NASCAR people on the racing community, and it's a great movie to take your dad to, and I mean, I do think a lot of people that are not into going and see the standard Hollywood fare will actually enjoy this film. So hopefully it'll do well and show Fox and Disney that, yeah, we can still do some of these.